Hi everyone, Michael Smith here. Of all the tools we have at our disposal to take creative control of our lives, the most important and universal, I believe, is the law of attraction, that our thoughts create our reality through vibrational resonance, or simply that like attracts like in manifesting thoughts into things. And if you're watching this video, you likely agree. You've probably experienced firsthand the power of your thoughts in attracting outer situations, circumstances, and people that reflect those inner beliefs. And you have also likely noticed that the law of attraction doesn't discriminate between positive or negative thoughts. Its motto is basically, like attracts like it or not. But like me, you may have had mixed results in using the law of attraction effectively. It's not that it's complicated by any means, quite the opposite. Essentially focusing your thoughts on what you desire, feeling the emotion of achieving it, and then allowing it to manifest in whatever form it takes. The problem is that it's hard to visualize how this works vibrationally, and indeed why it works at all. We sort of have to take it on faith that the universe just works this way. We sure could use a picture of how it all fits together so that we can truly master the manifestation game. In this video, we're going to develop such a picture from scratch. Starting from the simplest conceptual way of how thoughts can turn into things, we'll work our way up from the polarized way our brain works, to number, to cycle, and finally to vibration and color, and see how each step naturally leads to the next. What we'll discover is a vibrational blueprint of manifestation itself, a quantum spectrum of 12 colored frequencies that resonates with 12 archetypal themes and emerges from a central frequency of love. I believe it's these 12 themes we're actually working with when we experience or manifest anything. And it's through the balancing of complementary colored themes that the law of attraction is powered by love. So, with that colorful introduction, let's get started. To help picture the law of attraction, we should begin with the simplest and most general way of describing the relationship between the thoughts we think and the things that show up in our world. That simplest picture is of no connection at all. Existence just is, and stuff just happens, regardless of what we think. This is what I call 1D existence thinking. 1D in that both thoughts and things exist in the same disconnected neutral state. But we know there's more to it. Everything we set out to do or create starts with us thinking about it first, of our thoughts driving our actions either consciously or subconsciously. This is what I refer to as 2D causal thinking, of there being a direct cause and effect relationship between thoughts and things, and therefore a positive-negative polarity between these two states. Or in the case of the human brain, a left-right polarity between our subjective imagination and objective practicality. Still, this left-right polarity of the mind between imaginative thoughts and realistic ones is a very difficult thing to quantify. That is, until we look to mathematics. Here we find a simple and precise relationship between the imaginary and the real in, you guessed it, imaginary and real numbers. This is where real numbers, the normal counting numbers we use to describe everything in the real world, are represented by a horizontal number line running through the origin, while the imaginary numbers run along a vertical line through that same origin. Together, they create a simple two-dimensional plane of horizontal and vertical coordinates about the origin, and this is called the complex plane. So, every possible point is described by a complex number consisting of two parts, a horizontal real part and a vertical imaginary part. So basically, imaginary numbers are simply numbers that are not yet real. But there's a special relationship between imaginary and real numbers in that they can transform into each other through rotation about a circle. This is defined by the expression I squared equals -1, such that multiplying an imaginary number I by itself rotates it 90 degrees onto the real number line, depicted here by the green arrow. Likewise, multiplying a real number by I rotates it onto the imaginary axis. In other words, when looking through a mathematical lens, imaginary probabilities become real manifestations, and do so through circular rotation about the origin as a neutral point of reference. This further refines our picture of thoughts turning into things as one of 3D spatial thinking, of not only the polarity between positive and negative, and between imaginary and real, but also of neutrality within. So what we see emerging now is a rudimentary picture of consciousness itself, of a neutral point of perspective, the origin, experiencing itself in a spatial way through imaginary and real polarity. And what connects those two polarized states of potential and actual is the geometry of rotation. Still, the circular rotation described here by our mathematical picture is pretty limited, essentially just 4 90-degree rotations about a circle. In mathematical terms, this is called the base 4 number cycle, a rotational cycle through 4 possible positions, 1, I, -1, and -I. This only allows 2 possible ways of a circle dividing itself, in half or in quarters. Granted, this base 4 structure of complex numbers is more versatile than the base 2 structure of the human brain, which can only differentiate itself one way, in half. Nevertheless, there are more versatile number cycles available, and we should expect nature to utilize the most efficient approach. So, still retaining the 4 positions of the base 4 cycle to retain the validity of complex numbers, our next more versatile choice would be a base 8 cycle. This allows 3 ways of expressing the whole, in half and in quarters like base 4, but also in eighths. Yes, better, but not the best we can do. This brings us to the base 12 cycle. Here, there's 5 ways of dividing the whole, in half and in quarters like base 4, but also in thirds, sixths, and twelfths. So, for a slight increase in complexity, we gain a big increase in versatility. To gain further versatility beyond this, to 6 ways of dividing the whole, we would need to jump to base 24, but at a cost of much higher complexity. So, at the end of the day, the best balance between versatility and size is achieved by base 12. And now that we've brought the idea of cycle into the mix, and therefore of a sequence occurring over time, our picture of thoughts turning into things becomes one of 4D temporal thinking, of the same 3D perspective of our mathematical spatial model, of positive, negative, relative to neutral, but also sequence. In other words, of the self, the neutral origin, experiencing polarity in both space and time, and doing so through the base 12 cycle. Note that base 10, the cycle currently used as the default for science, can only be divided 3 ways, in half, fifths, or tenths, and is therefore no more versatile than base 8, despite being bulkier. Also, base 10 doesn't even align with the base 4 structure of complex number rotations, which is a lack of consistency that never made sense to me. So, I suspect that the arbitrary use of base 10 has only complicated things for mathematics and physics, and obscured our efforts at seeing reality accurately. Now, it turns out that the base 12 cycle itself can be expressed even more simply in mathematical terms. That's because all 12 positions of the cycle can be expressed using prime numbers, numbers that cannot be divided further. In fact, every whole number is either a prime number itself, such as 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11, or a product of primes, such as 4 being the product of 2 times 2, 6, 2 times 3, 8, 2 times 2 times 2, and so on. So, when we look at the base 12 cycle, there are only 4 positions at which primes can occur in any higher cycle. These are positions 1, 5, 7, and 11. Note we can exclude positions 2 and 3 as primes, as these are only prime numbers in the very first cycle of 12, and basically represent the prime framework of the base 12 cycle itself, of 2 times 2 times 3 equals 12. Also note that although primes can only occur at positions 1, 5, 7, and 11, some of these will indeed be non-prime, those that happen to also be multiples of previous primes, such as 25 for example. Although when the number 25 occurs at prime position 1, that is 1 plus 2 cycles of 12, 25 also happens to equal 5 times 5. This explains why the gaps between successive primes tends to get larger as the numbers get bigger. There are simply more and more smaller primes that can show up, sort of like harmonics. That aside, the base 12 cycle is fully described by prime positions 1, 5, 7, and 11. Well, if you thought the picture couldn't get any simpler than 4 rotating points describing how thoughts turn into things, then you'd be wrong. That's because each of the 4 prime positions also represents a magnitude equal to its number. It can be described as a vector of that length pointing away from the origin, and any pair of vectors that point in opposite directions subtract from each other into a new combined vector. Here we see that vectors 7 and 1 are opposite each other, as are vectors 11 and 5. This means that both pairs simplify down to two vectors at positions 7 and 11, both with a length of 6. As such, we end up with a base 12 cycle of radius 6 with two prime positions at 7 and 11 only. And whenever one of these points crosses the horizontal real number line is where a prime number can manifest. This reveals a remarkably simple geometry, the base 12 prime cycle, that still fully describes everything we've discussed so far. And now that we have 2 points on a circle rotating through a cycle, this automatically generates a double sine wave vibration when we express it over time. Picture rolling the circle sideways. And because the vibration is confined to the same base 12 cycle, it oscillates back and forth, creating what's called a standing wave, a wave that's motionless as a whole and therefore timeless, despite its 2 points moving forward and backward through time. And importantly, the central point through which this standing wave recirculates is position 6, making this the vibrational origin and point of self-awareness of the entire waveform. As with our base 12 prime cycle, wherever this prime vibration crosses the real axis is where numbers as probabilities can manifest into prime numbers as real particles. Although any of the 12 quantum geometries can manifest, only those at prime positions 1, 5, 7, and 11 can do so in a stable and lasting way, by virtue of their geometry directly touching the real axis. Maybe this is why the up and down quarks and their antiparticles are the building blocks of stable matter and antimatter. And if we also express a cycle through space, that is, rotation into the page, our double sine wave in 2D actually becomes a double helix in 3D. However, as forward-looking observers, all we see is the 2D sine wave front view or holographic projection of that 3D double helix, its extra dimensional spin into the page hidden from view. This transition from cycle to vibration further refines our picture of thoughts turning into things, from one of time-bound sequential cycles to one of timeless vibrations, or what we could call 5D eternal thinking. In other words, of the self, position 6, experiencing polarity through 12 timeless vibrational frequencies. This brings us to our sixth and final higher dimensional perspective of manifesting thoughts into things. As the prime vibration represents one complete experiential cycle, and since every subsequent cycle passes through the same intersection point at position 6, all possible experiences would form the 3D shape of a torus. This might in turn explain why matter at all fractals of scale tend to assume this toroidal shape, from atoms to red blood cells, the brain, human biofield, magnetic fields, solar systems, spiral galaxies, and perhaps even the multiverse. This higher dimensional perspective represents 6D unity thinking, of the self, position 6, experiencing wholeness through infinitely many potential cycles of polarity. Now, I know we spent a lot of time on this one slide, but thanks for your patience. It's helped us zero in on a specific geometric picture of how manifestation works, of each cycle as a double helix vibration of 12 quantum probabilities, and of all possible cycles as a toroidal probability space. But because the law of attraction pertains to individual cycles of manifestation, it's the double helix vibration that we will focus on for the balance of this video. With all the math and cranial stuff out of the way, we can now let the prime vibration show its true colors. Here's the prime vibration once again, but this time shown from both perspectives. Its front view as the two-dimensional standing wave we perceive, and to the left its side view, the base 12 cycle that rotates into the page. On the cycle, I've shown with colored arrows all 12 orientations of prime positions 7 and 11, the green arrow being the starting home position of position 6. On the vibration, I show how we perceive those 12 arrows from our front row seat, so to speak. We see their projected height and proportion above and below the neutral real axis, and the direction they're pointing, up or down, but not their depth and direction of spin into or out of the page. To help with that, here's the 12 individual cycles showing each of those arrow positions, basically if we're able to also watch the show from the wings. Now at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that the law of attraction works through a spectrum of 12 colored frequencies, which resonate with 12 archetypal themes. These themes are based on the 3 geometric properties I just covered and the overall quality that best describes their combined effect. Again, those properties are height, or probability amplitude, proportion, or polarity, positive, negative, or neutral, and direction of spin, up, down, towards, or away. By the way, these are the same 3 properties that physics uses to describe quantum particles, the particles of matter of which the physical universe is made. Probability amplitude as mass, polarity as electrical charge, and spin as angular momentum. The vibrational frequencies of the 12 quantum positions also happen to align with the colors of the visible spectrum of light, and therefore also follow the same rules for light. Of all colors being derived from 3 primary colors, red, blue, green, and of the full spectrum, the 3 primary colors, or any pair of complementary colors, all combining to create white light. But before we walk through the 12 vibrational themes, there's a further property of the prime waveform that helps clarify how each theme flows into the next. This is the single wave produced when the 2 prime waves are added together, basically their net vibration, shown here as a green wave. This reveals the vibration with which each position naturally resonates when the overall prime vibration is being freely and fully experienced, what I refer to as the path of resonance. Since the prime vibration itself represents position 6 gaining self-awareness through polarity, and that position 6 resonates with the theme of love, as we will soon see, the green wave is actually the path of resonance with love. As such, any position or positions out of alignment with this path in any given cycle will distort the prime vibration to some degree and alter its experience of love. Still, to fully know any vibration is to experience its full range of potential. Thus, for love to fully know itself, it must experience the full vibrational gamut from what love is to what it isn't. As such, every unique expression of the prime vibration, however discordant or dysfunctional it may seem, enhances the self-awareness of love, an eternal process of love knowing itself more deeply. We begin the cycle with position 0 shown in magenta, or pink. As its geometry is that of a point above the real axis and with a spin fully away, it resonates as a purely unmanifest and distant potential. As this point actually represents the ending potential of the previous cycle, the blue wave, and the starting potential of the new cycle, the black wave, the more positively we end each cycle and begin the next determines our overall starting potential. And as the path of resonance with love places the start of the green wave at its maximum height, to resonate with love means beginning each new experience with maximum optimism and hope. Next, we experience a geometry of position 1 in the rose color, that of positive polarity only, above the real axis, and the first point of contact with the real axis. This is the singular geometry of new beginnings, initiative, and independence. Its spin now slightly downward, position 1 begins to gain momentum and feel tangible. As this places the path of resonance, the green wave, directly on the upper prime wave, it's with initiative and self-confidence that we should begin any new experience in order to resonate with love. At position 2 in red, the geometry changes from a singular polarity to one of duality, of a 2-to-1 ratio of twice the positive polarity above the real axis, then negative polarity below. Its spin more downward now. Position 2 feels even more engaged and committed. The path of resonance, falling halfway above the real axis, calls for a more positive bias towards cooperation than to its negative polarity of separation and competition. In other words, relating to contrast in a cooperative way, yet without giving away all your power, is the most loving response. From the biased polarity of position 2, we now experienced the balanced polarity of position 3 in orange. This calls for an equal mix of asserting creative influence on that which you can control, while adapting to that which you cannot, maintaining neutrality overall. This is the neutral geometry of the catalyst, that which causes change without changing itself. Its spin now fully downward, it is here at position 3 that the weight of reality is most keenly felt, and potentials most powerfully made into reality. The overall range of potential at its greatest anywhere in the cycle, position 3 offers the greatest possibilities for creativity and diversity. Also, the path of resonance falling directly on the neutral reality axis means that it's through a neutral and objective balance between self-expression and going with the flow that most resonates with love. From the highly polarized and influential geometry of position 3, we move next to the more stable and settled geometry of position 4 in yellow, that of structure. Here, the geometry becomes biased and polarized once again, similar to position 2, but unlike 2, which called for a greater positive assertion of its theme, position 4 calls for the opposite, of allowing less structure and more freedom, the path of resonance falling halfway below the real axis. This suggests that a greater bias towards simplicity and flexibility while maintaining enough order to feel safe is the most loving response. Also, its spin now beginning to move toward us helps lessen the steep downward trajectory of the path of resonance, imparting a reassuring sense of control as we allow more unpredictability. The adaptive bias of position 4 prepares us for the singular polarity of position 5 in lime green, the transformative theme of change. Where position 1 was our initial engagement with the real axis, position 5 marks our stepping off point into the unknown where love resides. The angle of spin even more toward us now, we feel the momentum of personal change upon us. The path of resonance now falling directly on the lower prime wave, it's through complete trust and courage that love comes within reach. This brings us to position 6 in green, the very heart of the base 12 prime vibration. The merging of opposite polarities into a singular and timeless point of connection, it represents the very geometry of the concept of love. Like position 0, at which potential is maximized through both the assertion and allowance of what's possible, it's through the giving and receiving of love that the potential of 6 is most fully realized. The spin now directed completely towards us and the downward trajectory of the path of resonance halted, position 6 resonates with a profound sense of connection and unity. Love is the ground state and intention of all that is, and the turning point from the physical heaviness of positions 1 through 5 to the spiritual enlightenment of positions 7 through 11. Note too how the singularity of love is hidden below the reality axis, within a literal black hole of darkness, which is why love is felt so deeply within and just as elusive to find. The enlightened counterpart of position 1's geometry, of a physical new beginning, position 7 in bluish-green, resonates with a new beginning of truth. With its forward spin now turning upward, we feel pulled towards higher learning and of sharing truth with others in loving ways. It is this sense of purpose and belief that empowers us to apply our truth in constructive ways, the manifestation theme of position 8 in cyan. The enlightened counterpart of position 2, of achieving balance through physical contrast, position 8 resonates with achieving physical-spiritual balance. Its even more elevated spin gives a sense of capability and self-worth that we can achieve anything when inspired by love. This brings us to the balanced polarity of position 9 in azure blue, of completion. The enlightened counterpart of position 3, of physical cause and effect in neutral balance, position 9 resonates with celebrating achievement while accepting endings beyond our control. Its spin fully upward, position 9 acknowledges every outcome with loving gratitude and acceptance. The neutral acceptance of position 9 enables the contemplative awareness of position 10 in deep blue. As the enlightened counterpart of position 4, of physical flexibility and open structure, position 10 resonates with mental flexibility and open-mindedness. So, instead of relaxing merely physical constraints, position 10 calls for relaxing any perceptual biases which obscure love. Its upward spin, starting to retreat away now, enhances our sense of selflessness for the greater good. Finally, the selfless clarity of position 10 enables us to see the illumination of position 11 in violet. The enlightened counterpart of position 5, of physical change, Position 11 resonates with a change in perspective. Its positive spin, almost fully retreating away, enables the greater truth to be seen beyond ourselves as we complete the cycle at position 12, all colors of light adding to white. These 12 archetypal themes and the prime vibration through which they're expressed are in fact the foundation of base 12 numerology, of numbers having vibrational meanings which we can consciously resonate and create with. But, like the law of attraction, numerology had always been hard for me to visualize until I realized that the prime vibration embodies those meanings in its very geometry, and that numbers are just the labels we give those geometries. For my entire 30-year career as an engineer and statistician, I'd been looking at numbers in geometry the wrong way around, of numbers as fundamental and the statistical patterns they make as secondary qualities, rather than geometric qualities as being truly fundamental and numerical quantities as being secondary, of qualia before quanta, of thoughts before things. And now that we've defined the 12 colored themes of the base 12 prime cycle, we're finally ready to show how they work together to power the law of attraction. Recall when I said that the base 12 cycle follows the same rules for light in how colors combine, that all 12 colors combine into white light, as does each pair of complementary colors? Well, that's how the law of attraction works. Each pair of complementary themes, when applied together, vibrationally grounds that step into neutral reality, the place where things manifest, the reality axis shown in gray. And because complementary colors are always 6 colors apart on opposite sides of the color wheel, they come together through the 6 of love. So, by completing the 6 steps in order, we ground all 12 themes into reality in the most efficient and loving way. Let's walk through how the 6 steps work to clarify the overall process. First, imagine a potential you want, the magenta or pink 0, and are passionate about, green 6. Note how the magenta and green arrows at 0 and 6 are equal and opposite in amplitude, thus balancing and neutralizing each other's energy as light and transforming it into matter. Basically, E equals mc squared in action. Next, focus your intention on the desire, rose and 1, believing it's possible, bluish green and 7. Then, relate to the feeling of it already being yours, red 2, knowing you're worthy and capable, cyan at 8. Next, follow synchronicity's guidance, orange 3, trusting it will happen, as your blue 9. Then, be flexible as to the form it takes, yellow 4, staying receptive and open, deep blue 10. And last, seize the opportunity, lime greens 5, once it's illuminated, violet 11. That's it, the same law of attraction we all know and love, but this time with each step really spelled out and reinforced through the power of love. More importantly, we now have a clear visual blueprint to follow, a blueprint that's backed up by the science of mathematics, geometry, vibration, light, and color. This truly makes the law of attraction a universal principle for manifesting anything. In fact, we can apply it in the very same way for manifesting balance of any kind, such as the healing of emotional, mental, or physical imbalance. Again, expressing the complementary theme of any imbalance helps neutralize it with love, bringing it to the surface, as gray, so to speak, to be revealed and cleared. Those familiar with chakra balancing of our energy, body, and aura will know exactly what I'm talking about. This too is a dynamic vibrational spectrum of colored frequencies centered through the heart chakra of love. But I'll save that topic for a separate video. Before we wrap up, I should mention something that often trips us up when using the law of attraction. This is having a physical mindset versus a spiritual one when trying to manifest. A great way to explain this is with light versus pigment. When working with light, as discussed, all colors combine in an additive way to produce the clarity of white light, as do the 3 primary colors of light, red, green, and blue. And in terms of the prime vibration, we see how the red of duality, position 2, and the blue of awareness, position 10, are centered on the green of love, position 6, making love the focal point of an enlightened perspective. This illustrates once again why our primary spiritual focus as light is of love attaining awareness through duality. The base 12 numerology of these three themes highlights this too, where 2 plus 6 plus 10 equals 18 in base 10, which is 16 in base 12, one cycle of 12 plus 6. And 16 resonates with the 1 plus 6 equals 7 energy of truth through new beginnings of love, of self-love as our ultimate truth. And as we can see by the depth of the green wave at position 6, the path of resonance with love represents the maximum amplitude of potential we can experience in the entire prime vibrational cycle. Also, love being centered between the past to the left and the future to the right, that potential is always achieved in the now moment. With physical pigment, on the other hand, color works in a subtractive way by absorbing those frequencies and combining to black, the very opposite of clarity. The three primary colors of pigment, cyan, magenta, and yellow, and their placement on the color wheel and the prime vibration, are likewise the exact opposite of light. They are shifted 6 positions away from love, such that the 0 of potential, magenta, is now the focal point of perspective, followed by the 4 of structure in yellow and the 8 of manifestation in cyan. Thus, a physical mindset, that of pigment, takes on a definite materialistic bias towards manifesting physical forms of abundance, of potential attaining structure through manifestation. Not that physical abundance is evil by any means, it's just that it distracts our focus from love if pursued at the exclusion of all else. It skews our sense of self-worth to one of perpetual lack, of striving for a potential that's always in the future. Sure enough, the base 12 numerology of the three primary themes of pigment underscores this, where 0 plus 4 plus 8 equals 12 in base 10, which is the double digit 10 in base 12, one cycle of 12 plus 0. And the double digit 10 resonates with the 1 plus 0 equals 1 energy of new beginnings through new beginnings of potential, basically of achieving potential for potential's sake with no regard to love. And as you can appreciate by now, the law of attraction operates through consciousness as light, the true essence of what we are. However, we incarnate into physical bodies with full amnesia no less, to navigate our way through layers of physical density to rediscover that light within. So, when we get too focused on physical reality, we see everything through the lens of physical pigment or paint, so to speak, of layer upon layer of physical density, which only obscures the way and darkens our ability to see love. I hope this video has helped you understand the law of attraction better, to visualize what's going on vibrationally behind the scenes, and to see how you can really master the art of manifestation in your own life. And, above all, to appreciate that love is what lights the way to that mastery. If you'd like to explore manifestation more deeply, check out my other videos, my books, Base 12 Numerology and the Prime Vibration, or my website, michaelsmith12.com. Thanks so much for watching.